Yes. It's been a while again, folks. Rudy! So my deal was that I loved Magic. Had a play group of friends that played once or twice a week. People grow up, and that situation wasn't happening anymore. Me and my one available buddy pivoted to Flesh and Blood. So fun. And then sorcery. We never looked back. Much love and respect for Magic and Flesh and Blood. Thanks again, Rudy. I appreciate it, Bob. So hopefully this video doesn't come out probably a month or two after this transaction is done, whenever I get to this. But boy, we're going to have a good little talk today, ladies and gentlemen. First, let's start with the couple Flesh and Blood cards. And then the two high rollers here. So I'm still probably, I don't know, I won't say one of the few, but I am still one of the collector's investors of, I love original, they call it whack now, Welcome to Wraith, Arc, and Crew. I still love the original cold foils. You got a WTR Legendary cold foil. We got the old leathers here from the old WTR Legendary. We got the old infamous Tectonic over here again, Legendary, Welcome to Wraith, and of course, Bracers. Then as we continue to move forward here, we've got the infamous, you know what the skull cap is, the infamous Arc Legendary, and of course, Teklo from Arc, and of course, the old Graspy, 3 legendaries, and of course, for our 4th and final legendary here, Stormstrider's cold foil. So this transaction had 4 WTRs, 4 Arcs, and then the Mac Daddies. We have the world infamous, the beautiful, full face, full arts promo version of the tunic, everybody. I don't know what the quantity is in existence of this promo. I know they're very expensive. And then, of course, we have the world famous WTR cold foil version, the originals of the tunic here. So I guess we'll put that in the 5th legendary for the Arc and the promo there. So before we go into this Magic and Collector's Edition here, first we have these infamous, I consider these the best of the best for the beginnings, the origins of Flesh and Blood. I still think they are iconic. They are absolutely gorgeous. And this is the first time, by the way, this is the first time I've ever owned the promo full art where you can actually see her beautiful face and hair in the tunic out. I've never owned one of these. This is the first time I've ever owned one. The only downside was it is not super gradable and super nice and perfect, because if you actually look, unfortunately, we have ourselves a nasty dent right in the middle of the card right there. I don't know if you guys can see that. When we were auditing this one, I was like, oh man, it looks like somebody took a pen or maybe an impact or something. We have a nasty little dent in the middle of the card. And overall, besides that, it is a beautiful card. The classic, infamous little nicks on corners and edges. You can see a little white mark right there, which is very, very classic and very, very normal for old Flesh and Blood cards from the 2019-2020. I know a lot of the newer Flesh and Blood stuff on the cold foils, they've really done a good job on correcting a lot of those infamous corner issues and nicks and chips that plagued a lot of the early Flesh and Blood cards. This is, again, I get messages like all this all the time. Like I've had to even at Premier Card Grading, Rudy Schilling, PremierCardGrading.com, one of the most common customer service angry people that we get is people send messages saying, Rudy, I sent in cards. I personally pulled the card from a pack. Why did it come back an 8.5 or a 9? Or how come it's not a 10? I pulled it personally. Why did PCG damage the cards? And that is a classic thing that every grading company's always dealt with, is that a lot of people just don't understand how grading works. And that, well, most cards out of a pack fresh does not mean, perfect 10s. It doesn't even mean 9.5 gem mint. That is an infamous, that's been a very common misconception for 20 years I've been in the grading world, and I don't expect it to ever change, because a lot of people just don't know. It's not that they're dumb or they just don't know. They're not informed. And this is very common with Magic the Gathering, very common with Pokemon. Now in different worlds, like if you kind of, let me give you guys an example over here. Let me get the dust off of it. So if you grade a Weiss card, for example, anything Bushy Road related, One Piece, Weiss, these type of cards always grade really, really high because of the quality of the actual card stock. The printers that they use are very, very different than Cardamunde's, Flesh and Blood, or Magic the Gathering. These are very thick card stocks. They're very, very different. So things like that they tend to grade and come out a lot nicer. And yes, that is the actual gold label with it's real 24 karat gold. Is it 24 karat or is it 20 karat? I think it's 24 karat. At least that's what the packaging says, and that's what we're paying for. So just want to give everybody some tips on that when you actually get to grading and understanding why a 9.5 gold label or even a 10 flesh and blood is a really big deal. It is very, very difficult to get. Essentially, not only do you have to find the rare card, but you have to really look at it and flip it on the back, put bright light on it, and really see, is it perfect or does it have the nicks and flips in the corners? So that's the flesh and blood. I want to talk about the market conditions real quick before we move on to the Magic the Gathering part of this collection purchase, the really infamous International Collector's Edition with a lot of love, definitely not minty. Flesh and blood is growing. The player base is doing very well. The new sets and the excitement around new releases has been the best I've seen in many years. There's no way to discount that. There's no way to shill, lie, or BS it. That is a fact of it. LSS has become very, very aggressive on how much they're printing and restocks and availability, at least in the United States. The theory around the interwebs is, and again, I have no validity. You guys would have to get official confirmation or, non-confirmation from the company, but the internet believes that the tighter print runs in the United States, essentially Flesh and Blood's not crushing the print runs super low, but the amount of product flowing to the US, a lot of it's being redirected to Japan and other countries in different parts of the world. I know for us Americans, that's a weird thing to think that there's a world outside the United States, but it is a real thing. I know it's kind of people are like, what? That's real? So that's where I believe that's where they're making up for the reduced print run in the US, is that they're just getting the revenue from other parts of the world, which makes sense. And so far it's been doing a really good job. Now, when it comes to older stuff, we are not seeing any more price collapsing. We're not seeing prices tank anymore. On the old stuff and high end, we are seeing massive stability. Now you're noticing, I'm not saying we're seeing a bull market and skyrocketing or anything to do with vintage Magic the Gathering. Hell, even vintage Pokemon, vintage Flesh and Blood. I know, well, I guess vintage Flesh and people consider vintage with Flesh and Blood anything before Uprising. In other words, anything before Fab 2.0, where they got rid of the first and unlimited design of the game. They consider that kind of the old vintage era. So I can't really say much negative about the particular Flesh and Blood because all vintage across the board is underperforming. Not just Flesh and Blood, not just like older Pokemon, not just older Magic. The market desires new. The younger generation, the young people across the board, the newer player base, Magic, Pokemon, One Piece, Weiss, Flesh and Blood, Disney Lorcana, Sorcery, even the brand new games, the Godzillas, the HoloLives, the Gundam. People want new stuff. So that is where the market is focusing and funneling money into. Now, it's not going to stay forever this way. We just don't know. Remember, market cycles can last longer than we all want to admit or that we're comfortable with. So we got to remember that. It could be this way for a long time. Seriously, that's a very real possibility. So if you're interested in these things, if you believe in Flesh and Blood long term, which clearly I do, I'm still spending thousands. I wish I could buy all these. They're not $20, $30 cards. This right here was thousands of dollars. And yeah, that's pretty much, sure, back in the day, in the boom of 2021, this right here would have been like $30,000, $40,000. No joke. Now, obviously, I would never pay $30,000, $40,000, but that was the peak of the bubble before we had all the crypto crash, the stock crash, the market, everything changed at that time. But even today, like I said, this is still, in my opinion, this is easily a $5,000, $10,000 lot, which is what I paid. And I believe in the future of Flesh and Blood. And, if collectors and investors, if it expands and the vintage becomes popular again, I feel like this is the area and this is the original stuff that's going to, I feel would be the most underpriced. Now, if it doesn't happen, well, you have to be happy to own these beautiful pieces of the beginning of the game, which I am, which is, again, first time I've ever owned that. So I'm kind of excited about it. So that is the end of the Flesh and Blood conversation. Past that, I know what do we got here? God, I haven't done box openings of anything. I haven't done box openings of Magic, Pokemon, Flesh and Blood. I haven't done any box openings lately. The market's just really happy. We're about, 45 days away from Super Slam, which is end of September. So you guys are watching this probably beginning mid-August. We're still quite a ways off with it. And it's going to be very difficult to kind of know how the market's going to react to it. You never know with stuff, but I can tell you, the Hunted, and obviously, Rosetta, Hunted, I think High Sea, all of them have been incredibly successful, and all of them, even when you go back a few sets, they've been holding up. And, you know, the internet believes, oh, well, once the next Flesh and Blood set comes out, the previous one always collapses. Well, you know, I understand living legends, long-term, there's a lot of complexities to the pros and cons of sealed Flesh and Blood, but the last 3 sets have been doing substantially better than the previous 3 sets before that. So we'll see how that continues to go. And that wraps up the short Flesh and Blood conversation. I just want to share. I thought that was a really cool purchase and everything. Now we get to an interesting... All right, now I'm going to be really negative. I'm going to be really negative with everybody, okay? This gets us to, unfortunately, Vintage Magic the Gathering. And as you all can see right here, we have that is not dust on the cards. That is actual wear and damage. We have a nasty, heavy played set of a beautiful historical collector's edition over here. So we do have our 10 dual lands. Definitely nowhere near. And again, this is not, it looks almost like you want to wipe it off, but no, that's actually surface like wear and corners. And so we've got our duals right there. Very cool looking stuff there. We got our infamous wheels. We got the balance. We got 2. Oh, some of these are really rough, everybody. But it is still beautiful. So let's look for our Power 9. So, of course, we got our nice Ancestral Recall here. Definitely, yikes. That is definitely, at least it's not damaged, but that was pretty rough there. But yeah, even our Power 9 here, everybody looks really not the best. We've seen a lot worse, but overall, the worst we have. The Lotus, I wouldn't say... I would say what? MP to HP? I mean, the corners are pretty good, but God, that surface on there is awful. The worst card in this batch, unfortunately, I'm sure if you've been around long enough to know, you already realize what you're looking at. This is, unfortunately, clipped corners. This is a straight damaged, nasty Time Twister. We have nice rounded corners that were cut with scissors. You can actually see the diagonal straight line on the corner clipping there. So unfortunately, this would be you couldn't even grade this even if you wanted to grade it as a 1 or 2. This would be under the authentic altered because this is an actual cut, trimmed, clipped card. And you can definitely, you see how see natural wear, you wouldn't have that kind of point. Can I give you guys here, let me put something behind it. Let me put like there you go, let's do that. So natural wear, you wouldn't have that straight line. You would have a natural, more like that corner. See how that looks more natural, how it's curved? But whenever you see corners like this on these old ones and you see that straight cut, yeah, unfortunately but again, the condition is so rough on this thing, it's really, it's not going to make too much of a difference. But it is a beautiful Time Twister from the past. It is real, but it has been trimmed, everybody. So I think the thing I really want to go through before I'm going to kind of, I guess I'll just flip through them while I talk, let you guys look at some old cool cards. Everybody always asks me about vintage Magic. That's one of the most common things that you guys ask me about all the time. And I just don't have positive news. We continue to be in this era that people just they're just not happy with it. The market is very rejecting, very shunning. You know, oh God, the condition, these are rough. People just, younger generation, I know it's going to sound crazy, but to you guys, some of you guys listening to my channel for a long time, but younger people would rather buy new collector boxes sealed or serialized cards and things like that. This product here that you're looking at, this old style, I love Cyclopean too. This is not really the flavor of the month. This is not, you guys do know that this artwork extends from the MOCs, right? Like an extended art. Do people know that? I feel like all the young people don't know that anymore. Our dark bleached, or not bleached, the too dark lack of coloring on the infamous Icy, just like Basalt Monolith. The issue is, everybody, I still feel they say, which we'll have more conversation, they say that long-term trends in culture permanently shift, and many of these things don't come back. They simply do not recover. And a lot of people feel that Magic and vintage Magic has already had its heyday, it's already peaked, and it's already over with. There is a general consensus that people think that is a real thing. I still would like to believe, at least I tell myself, what do they call them on the internet? Copium? I still tell myself that I do think there'll be a time in the future when market trends and what's hot and whatnot will revert back to the older, rarer, less printed, more desirable originals. Now, historically, that does come true, but it does not always. Remember, in very long time frames, there is data that suggests when things go out of style, they go out of style. That's it. There are examples in history, quite a bit of them, that when things kind of become out of favor, and out of cultural significance or cultural acceptance or when younger generations simply don't connect with things, they don't come back in price. And we have to accept in the back of our minds, if you're still a goofball like me buying collector's editions and old magic, if you still believe in it, you have to accept there is a small chance, no matter how large or minuscule, that we have to acknowledge the Schrodinger's cat thing. There is a potential outcome that these things never go up in value. And if you're buying these things, you have to accept that you're buying it because you truly enjoy it and that you're okay with it never going up in value. And that is the toughest thing for a lot of people to accept and to really believe might be the future. And if you can stomach that, well, let's look at it this way. On a risk-reward standpoint, okay, think about this. On a risk-reward standpoint, if you bought, I don't even know, let's pick something, a revised set, okay? Do I have here, hold on, here, we'll put these away here. Okay, here, I got an old thing over here. Here's the thing from another video from the back. If you bought a revised set, a complete revised set, dual lands and everything, okay? If you bought one, and let's say today you paid, I don't know, let's say the conditions average, okay? $3,000-$4,000. Let's say it's a nice set, okay? If you bought a full set, all 10 dual lands, full revised, Wheel of Fortunes, the disc, Mana Volts, everything, right? And you pay $3-4 grand. If you tell yourself, hey, that $3-4 grand is still going to be worth the same $3-4 grand in 10, 20 years or the rest of your life, are you okay with that? And would you still buy it today? If your answer is yes, then it's a no-brainer. Because you have to look at it like this. Let's look at the downside. Vintage magic never comes back. Today's prices stay the same, or maybe they erode down 1, 2, 3% a year. So for the next 10 years, you lose 5, 10, 20%. And then, of course, inflation and devaluing of the US dollar, maybe you lose 40, 50% of your purchasing power. If you're okay with that potential doomsday worst-case scenario, and then you say, okay, what is the most likely scenario? It stays flat. Maybe it grows a little bit. And then what's the best-case scenario? What is the bull case? Well, the best-case scenario is sometime over the next 5, 10 years, the vintage market becomes very hot again. And, well, a $3,000 set of revise goes to 5, 6, 7, goes to 5, 10,000. I could easily see a set of revise being $10,000. Above that, and my rationale is that, most dual lands would be $1,000 a piece. Wheel of Fortune, Copy Artifact, the Vault. A lot of these other cards are going to be $50, $100, $150, $200. And it can kind of push the overall value of the set. It could double or triple. So you ask yourself, the risk is negative 20, 30 at the worst case. And the best is what, 300% in a 10-year time frame? That is what they call kind of the alligator mouth, the symbol. That's the range, that's the variance of potential things. And you got to decide if you're comfortable with that. For me, I love the cards. Nostalgia and emotion will always overpower me because of my past and being a kid and never being able to have these old cards and didn't have any money. So for me, going back and always getting these things now, it's a very unique relationship. Some people would call it a toxic relationship, but that's the relationship I have with it. It was something I wasn't allowed to have as a kid. I couldn't attain it. I couldn't afford it. I never even owned one dual land when I was in middle school, high school, because they were too expensive at $10, $15 a card. And I always thought, whoa. And they almost became like this euphoric, symbolic thing, And, well, eventually, I became very fortunate in life and very blessed in life. And I was able to go back and build an empire around it. So, conclusion of this 20-minute video, everybody. It's difficult to always discuss and share these videos knowing that there's like a real chance that there's just nothing exciting ever going to happen with this. And the peak of vintage and reserve list buyouts was 2021. And you guys will see some other videos coming up and everything, which I'm going to be making a video on Pokemon because Pokemon is going through buyouts on single cards, kind of like what Magic did with reserve list buyouts in 2017 and 18. Now, Pokemon has modern cards that are being bought out, and the same thing is happening in Pokemon that we went through with Magic, a couple years back, which has been very interesting to see the parallels to that. So that's all I have. Hope you guys enjoyed this conversation and everything. Like I said, no shilling of Rudy's Patreon, no shilling of the new Spider-Man and Avatar, no shilling of the new Pokemon set and everything. You guys know what we do here. You know what it is, and hey, that's just where things are right now. And friendly reminder, if you guys are looking to grade any cards, definitely, if you want to try PCG, PremierCardGrading.com, this is your time to do it, because as you guys know, with 30 card standard orders, not only are you only paying the $19.95 a card instead of the insane prices some other companies charge, but on 30 card orders now, we're actually, the coupon code below, if you add that to your order, you actually get free sealed product back with your slabbed cards. So in Pokemon, like you see below, if you add that code, you actually get a sealed box of Paradox Rift SVO4 for free. With Magic, you get a sealed box of Final Fantasy Play for free back with your slabs. So if you ever want to try it, this is your time to do it. Weiss, get the Nikki Girls. Nikkei, you get 4 Nikki Girls for free. Again, Sorcery, you get Arthurian Legends for free. Again, if you've ever wanted to try grading, this is your time to do it, everybody. Past that, thanks for listening to Rudy's rants on the vintage Flesh and Blood world. And of course, the vintage magic of sadness. Hope you all have a beautiful day.